Hey, let's pretend for a second that there are two totally opposite ways of conducting a photo session. And let's call the first one an opportunistic approach, where before the photo session you would select your gear to be as flexible as possible. Maybe several camera bodies, maybe several lenses, to be able to shoot whatever seems appropriate in the forthcoming photo session. And then at the session, depending on the light, depending on the weather, the model, whatever you are photographing, you would just go with the flow and shoot whatever interests you or catches your eye. And you would be totally flexible with very little replanning, very little amount of restrictions what comes to the gear or what comes to your plan. An opportunistic approach. And then let's have a totally opposite way of conducting a photo session. Let's call that a restricted approach, where you would first restrict your alternatives and possibilities by just choosing one camera, maybe one lens. If you are shooting on film, maybe one film type, where maybe only one roll of film, only 12 pictures. To limit yourself what comes to the gear. And then you would create a plan for the photo session in advance. What do you want to photograph? What kind of feeling? What kind of pictures you want to get? What do you want to tell with your pictures? And then in this restricted plan, you would not veer away from your plan. You would stick to it, regardless of the situation at hand. Now, intuitively it seems that the first one is much better. Why would you restrict yourself? How can you get better pictures if you are restricted? Shouldn't you go to the photo session with an open mind and be opportunistic? But see, I claim that that's not always the case, and I feel more and more that restricting myself in not only with gear but also with the plan and sticking to my plan improves my work and allows me to go deeper instead of going wider. Now, I've been making these photo trips to the coast of Finland several times with a good friend of mine, Kari Paukola. And I made several videos about our trips. They are always special trips and I'm always looking forward to them. But you never know what's the weather going to be like, what's the lighting going to be like, what's my mood. So I pretty often want to be opportunistic. I take several cameras with me, several different film stocks, and I think that, maybe I can use some of these. Let's see. But now we had another trip planned to Hanko. Hanko is the most southern tip of the continental Finland. Seascape, landscapes, all those kind of things. And we've been photographing that quite a bit. So this time I thought that let me try to be more restrictive and let me, to the best of my abilities, try to stick to my plans. As I said, let me try to go deeper instead of wider. And first I selected my gear. I took my Rolleiflex with me, just one camera, and then Ilford FP4 Plus, and then I sort of was a bit more opportunistic. I also took a few rolls of Kodak TMAX 400 because I just happened to have it. Maybe I should have stick to one film stock, but. And then an ND 1000 filter because I had a plan, and then I was planning to develop everything in Rodinal. I wasn't anticipating how I will print these eventually. That's sort of the next level, and I should start doing that also more explicitly, but this time I didn't really think about, because there's a little bit of an experiment for me. Then I took my notebook and I wrote down some feelings, some plans of the actual photos I want to take with this gear. So this is what I wrote. I was planning for a series of photos, 12 to 15 pictures. And with a long exposure time, studying or investigating distance and time, like space, openness, near, far away, here, over there. These are the words I wrote down here. And these tools, and then I ask myself a question: can I somehow create attention? If I'm really trying to create peacefulness, openness, calmness, how do I then create tension into my pictures? And that's something that I wasn't sure about. That's, by the way, another theme in my work right now, that I'd like to learn to create something that is a bit more controversial into my pictures. Maybe I discuss about that in another time. I feel that I'm sometimes too calm and too peaceful in my photos. Anywho, now I have a plan, and I wanted to restrict myself to study distance, three-dimensionality, stop the time, create the calm, peaceful nature, and use only these tools. Regardless of the weather at hand, regardless of the time of the day, regardless of anything. And I was ready to head down to Hanko with my friend. It was a beautiful morning. Roads were frozen already. It was the first really cold morning here. So I drove carefully down to meet Kari, and then we drove to the coast. By the way, on a side note, I have now got my piano tuned, so it's perfectly tuned. I'm gonna play some music behind these pictures and these video clips, so at least it's in tune now. So let's see what happened. So hey, listen, it was very interesting, and I will do this again. I think it is so interesting to have a plan and then stick to it, regardless of whatever. Regardless of light, regardless of the wind conditions, regardless of the what else I might want to do. But it's extremely difficult, and I lapsed a few times and I started to take all kind of pictures, and none of those pictures are anything that I can build on. But when I was concentrating on my plan, distance, calmness, freezing the time, stopping the movement, I like those pictures because that's what I wanted to do, that's what I was planning to do. So now I can objectively look at my pictures and ask myself, did I manage to do that? Did I manage to get that feeling into my pictures? And I somewhat managed to do that, but I also failed. And those failures are equally important because now I can learn and I can start to build on that. Had I just randomly shot this and that, it would be much harder to learn. So there's that. I also think that this concept of deeper versus wider is interesting. Like when you have a pre-plan and you have a selected set of tools, you are forced to go deeper within that plan, within those tools. And that going deeper is always, I think, beneficial than just shooting things, at random. The biggest mistake I made this time was that I took my Leica with me. I recently acquired a Leica, and as a part of me trying to make up my mind, do I like this? I took this with me and I took several pictures with my Leica. Now I like those pictures too, but they didn't contribute to my original plan and they did not make me a better photographer, and I don't especially fancy those pictures. They were more like test pictures with my Leica, so let's leave them to that. And summarize this episode by saying that limiting your work is good to an extent. Sticking to your limitations and to your plans is hard. And going deeper into the plan, into the gear, teaches you more than going wide and being opportunistic. I don't know if I managed to explain to you what I mean, but I think this is actually pretty interesting to me to continue on this track and seeing how far can I go limiting my work and therefore hopefully creating better pictures. Thanks for watching. Next time something else.